Yo, what's up? It's NEWRVGE. Today I'm going to be breaking down a beat, and I'm going to be going through some of my tips and shortcuts that I use when making beats in Ableton. So the first thing that I do is I made a template that shows up every time I open a new project. So the best thing to do here is, if you're on Windows, it's in Options. If you're on Mac, you just click the Live button in the top left corner, and then you go to File folder and save current set as default. So once you get a basic live set going, see, I just have a basic clap and the basic hi-hat pattern, and then a whole bunch of MIDI tracks open with a audio track for a loop, and then I just saved that as my default, and now every time I open up, it has this exact set. So now let's break down a beat. Alright, so this is what we're going to be breaking down. To freeze something, you just gotta select your track and right click and click freeze. But I do suggest that before this, since when you freeze something it loses all its MIDI, I suggest that you hold Control or Command on Mac, drag your MIDI file into an open MIDI track which copies it, then do your freeze. That way you can keep the MIDI if you want to put it somewhere else. Okay, now that it's frozen, we have to flatten it to an audio form. Just right click and flatten. Now we're just left with these tails. We just select them and click delete. Now we have the frozen track and we have the MIDI above it. So first thing I'm going to break down is these hi-hats. This is my pattern right here that I used, but it's a little bit complex at parts because it goes into triplets. So there's two ways you can put it in triplets. You can either right click and click the triplet grid like this, or you can do Control or Command 3, and that puts it into triplets. If you want to make the grid smaller, just Control or Command 1, and to make it bigger, Control or Command 2. So if you're having trouble selecting the exact note that you want your hi-hat or melody to go on, you can just hold your mouse right to the left of the piano and click and drag to the right. Makes it as big as you want. So let's create a situation where you need the first bar of hi-hats duplicated over to the second half. All you have to do is Control or Command A and then Control or Command D. That'll do it for you right there. If you want to raise or lower them, Control A and then Shift up or down with your arrow keys. If you want to move something left or right, Control A and then left or right on your arrow keys. If you want to copy something over manually and not duplicate it, select what you want, press Control and drag it wherever you want, and make sure you let go of the mouse before letting go of Control because it will get rid of it. There's two ways to put in MIDI. You can double click, or you can press B and press them one at a time, more like FL. If you look up in the top left corner of the MIDI, you can see there is a REV and an INV. This is for reverse and invert. So if you ever want to reverse or invert your MIDI, you can click those buttons right there. So if I was to shorten all of these notes really small by doing Command or Control A and then Shift and arrow key back, this makes them all really small. One way I can do this is by either Control or Command A and arrow shift to the right, or I can press the legato button, which makes them all the same. This does create situations where there are notes that are small, like these, but this helps for more melodies and not really for hi-hats. Next, we're on the 808s. So here's my 808 pattern. Very basic, but if you look here in the bottom, you can see the velocities. And so these velocities aren't like FL. You can't just click and they go there. You have to drag them up manually, and you can select multiple at once by pressing Shift and selecting what ones you want. Then you can drag it down, and it drags them all down at once. If you want to create a slide note, just close out of this, open up your sampler, press Controls, turn the glide on, and choose how much time you want. I normally keep it at what it is, so let's see what it sounds like. Pretty basic, but you can choose what you want to do with it. As you can see here, I have a group of these two melodies. As you can see here, I have a group, In order to do that, you have to select 2 MIDI tracks and Control G. No, I'm going to do that again. As you can see here, I have a loop that has specific settings just for these 2 MIDI tracks that are inside of it. To create a group, you can press Control and click as many MIDI tracks as you want. Then do Control G. This creates a group. To rename it, you can do Control R. Name it whatever you want. To ungroup something, do Control Shift G. On the very right side, you can see here there's all these parameters, and they look kind of scary at first, but they're pretty simple. So this blue one right here, this is the volume. This controls whether it's on or off. The solo button solos just that track. And you can drag this button left or right for panning. This button right here, which is gray right now, you can turn this to red if you have an input plugged in so that you can record stuff into your Ableton. So now that we're pretty much done here, if we press tab, we can go over into the mixer. So it normally looks like this or something, but if you click right here and drag up, it makes it bigger, which I find is easier to read. So just like on the arrangement page, we have the mute, we have the solo, and we have our left and right, and we have our volume. Very basic once you play the beat. I've used FL before, and I find this easier than FL for mixing because I can actually get to read the volume, and sometimes after making beats for a long time, the bass doesn't sound loud, but it actually is because my ears haven't got to reset. So I find being able to read the actual volume is easier for mixing. Alright, thanks for watching the video. If you have any more questions, feel free to DM me. My social media should be on the screen. So thank you. Watch my other videos. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Peace out.